There are a number of books that articulate the importance of jazz musicians, especially Goan and Christian Goan musicians, on the early development of a lot of the film songs, especially Hindi film songs that came out of what's now called Bollywood. But a lot of these jazz orchestras and jazz musicians that were performing in private for-profit venues in the 1930s and early 1940s started to perform in these jazzy cabarets, and they were also performing as musicians in a lot of the early film songs, that especially those that incorporated a lot of heavy sort of jazzy elements as well too. And here are some examples of program booklets from cabarets these are all in Bombay. Most of these are from the Taj Mahal Hotel. A lot of the cabarets employed this sort of irresolute, exotic sensibility whose purpose was to point towards and idealize a sense of sort of irresolute exoticism in culture, ethnicity, nationality, etc. So this is an example of a cabaret titled A Breath of Spain, which sort of created this sort of irresolute notion of Spanish music. Mickey Corea was performing for this cabaret. He was one original musician who started performing in the 1920s in Karachi, late 1930s, came to Bombay, was performing in jazz groups with these African-American musicians, and then moved on to perform in these cabaret groups, which took on more of a thematic approach around this time. And these are in the middle and late 1940s. A lot of cabarets, again, were promoting the cabaret program booklets, promoting this notion of sort of irresolute cultural sensibility. This is an example of a woman performing a drum. This was a program booklet for a performance, a cabaret performance around the time of independence in 1947. This is in Bombay. Again, you see a woman incorporating perhaps a sort of generic, some sort of unidentifiable folk drum, in dress that may be alluding to certain styles of dress in India, classical dress, folk dress, but also, with shoulders bared, etc., demonstrating that there is a certain forward-looking sensibility among a sort of a newly independent India. This is also another example of a program booklet from the Taj Mahal Hotel, again promoting this sort of sense of irresolute, inchoate, sensibility in terms of dress and dance, this sort of a cabaret image in this example here. So a lot of these cabarets in the cabaret sensibility, and a lot of the musicians performing in these cabarets that were originally jazz musicians also started to perform in the cabarets and were performing for, and in some cases, ghostwriters or composers or arrangers for a lot of the early Hindi film songs. And I think that one sort of aspect of the early development of Hindi film songs, especially that included sort of jazzy Western elements, that is not entirely, has not been expounded upon, is that a lot of these jazz musicians were heavily involved in the development of that process. And if you watch some of the early Hindi films and some of the song dance sequences, many of them take place in cabarets. Oftentimes the musicians or the groups or musicians that were performing in the public sector in Mumbai at the time in these cabarets not only perform in a lot of very prominent song dance sequences in films, but are also acting as arrangers and helping with the composition of these styles of music as well too.